This is
Hi, Claire. Hey, Travis. Hey, Doug.
Hey, Chris, how are you?
Good.
okay. I don't know about the rest of you, but I had difficulty.
Hi, Jay.
Hey, y'all, how are you today?
Good.
Good deal.
Hey, Myrna, do you have, let's see, Sophia's here, she's here. I've got 6:01, so we can get started. So, good evening, everyone. Today's Tuesday, April 20th. The time is now 6:01. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of City of Georgetown Planning and Zoning Commission. At this time, Myrna, would you please call the roll so we can establish which commissioners are present and establish if we have a quorum?
Yes, good evening. Sheree Heinzman,
Here.
Kayla McCord,
Here.
Tim Haney,
Here.
Travis Perthews,
Here.
Jay Warren,
Happy day. Yes, ma'am.
thank you. Doug Noble,
Here.
Chris Stanley,
Here.
Jim Sawyer,
Here.
Mike Tyland,
Here.
Terry Williams. So it looks like we do have a quorum with all full commissioners. And we do have some items that are on the consent agenda as well as one on the regular legislative agenda that some commissioners need to recuse themselves from.
Okay, we can confirm those. I have several of them listed here, but when we get to that, we'll make sure we get all those covered. Okay, so we have a quorum. This time I'll remind everyone on the meeting that the complete agenda for tonight's meeting and all the supporting documents have been posted to the city's website. If you have questions on locating any of this information, please reach out to the planning department staff. Tonight's meeting will have several parts. We have a regular agenda, consent agenda, and legislative agenda. Tonight's regular agenda includes items A. The consent agenda is items C through BB, and the legislative agenda will be items BC through BE. So at this time, Sophia, if you wouldn't mind walking us through the process on how to interact in tonight's meeting virtually.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thank you all for attending today's Planning and Zoning Commission, both commissioners as well as attendees and audience members. Just as a reminder, we ask that you please state your name in advance of speaking. Please mute yourself until you are ready to speak. That just helps us preserve the sound quality and also allows everybody to understand who's speaking at a given time. If you are here to speak on a specific item, we just ask that you use the raise the hand function to let us know that you'd like to speak. If for some reason that is not working for you, please feel free to enter your name and the item that you want to speak on in the chat. If for some reason you're on the telephone, please unmute yourself when the chair identifies that time for open public hearing. Commissioners, if you have any issues either with IT or just concerns that you may have, please feel free to chat us directly. Andrena is running point on the meeting today. I'm assisting for a little bit, but we're here to support you on items. So if you run into a problem, you disconnect, please feel free to call us. We're going to put our number in the chat here in just a minute so that if you get disconnected, you have a telephone number to reach us at. And Chair, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sophia. So the first item we have on the regular agenda tonight would be nomination of selection of a secretary for the 21-22 term year. We made a selection on that in a prior meeting, and based on Commissioners Haney's outside employment, it's been determined that we need to select a different person for that role. Is that correct, Sophia?
Yes, that's right. Often Mr. Haney could be stamping the material that we need him to sign in another capacity. So we really need a dedicated secretary that can fulfill the obligations. Thank you.
Okay, so on that, Commissioners, the floor is open to a motion of a nomination on that.
This is Sheila McCord. I'll be glad to nominate myself to fill that role if you need somebody.
Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner McCord nominating Commissioner McCord to be the 2021-2022 Planning and Zoning Commission Secretary.
Stanley second.
Commissioner Stanley second. So Myrna, will you please call the roll on that?
Sheree Heintzman,
Yes.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Travis Perthews,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
Doug Noble,
Yes.
Chris Stanley.
Yes, thank you, Kayla.
Okay, so that passes 7-0. Congratulations, Kayla, and thank you. So the next item we have is public wishing to address the board. At this time, we have no items on the agenda. No person signed up to address the board. But as a reminder, persons may add an item to a future board agenda by filing a written request with the staff liaison no later than 1 week prior to the board meeting. The request must include the speaker's name and the specific topic to be addressed with sufficient information to inform the board and the public. Okay, so that takes us to the consent agenda, which includes routine and non-controversial items, along with items that do not require a public hearing. So tonight's consent agenda consists of items C through BE. And I believe we have conflicts on items N, item U, and item V on the consent agenda. Those are the three that I have. At this time, commissioners, do we have any other items that anyone needs to abstain on or that they would like pulled? Okay, not hearing anyone. The floor is open to a motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, staff would like to ask for item AJ to be pulled from the consent and move down to the legislative regular agenda.
Okay. AJ.
Yes, and that is associated with final plat case number 2021-6FP.
Okay, so we will be pulling items N, item U, item V, and item AJ.
Thank you.
Okay, and the floor is open to a motion.
It's J. I move that we approve the consent agenda with those stipulated removals as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. All items other than N, U, V, and AJ. And we have a second. So Myrna, would you please call the roll?
Who was the second made by?
Tim Haney.
Okay, thank you. Drew Heinzman,
Yes.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Travis Perthews,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Doug Noble,
Yes.
Chris Stanley.
Yes.
Okay, so that passes. I've got. Okay, so Adrian, would you prefer to go through the pulled items prior to the regular legislative agenda? Is that that's what we did last time? We're gonna keep on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so then the first item would be item N, and that would be construction plan item, and that looks like, let's see, whose item is that? Is that Mr.
Tim
Monk?
Haney, abstain.
Yes, we've got, I've got that down. We pulled that from consent agenda based on your.
And Myrna, I apologize, but will you remind me which of these are mine? I think 3 of them are, but I just wanted to make sure.
So Commissioner Stanley would be item U, V on the consent agenda, and then item B, C on the legislative agenda.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Haney is item N on the consent agenda, which is this item, which is Mr. Monk, I believe.
This is David Monk. This is consideration and possible action to disapprove for reasons set forth in the item of construction plans for the HCH Ranch Phase 1, construction plan 2020-54-con. And it's consisting of approximately 115.987 acres out of the D Casanova Survey, abstract number 128, and W.A. Turner Survey, abstract number 607, and R. Baker Survey, abstract number 824. This is a large lot subdivision with private streets and private water and septic systems. It has a few comments left before it gets approved, and so it's got a few comments left to clean up. And I can entertain any questions.
Travis, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I mean, these are still consent agenda items. We just had to pull them out due to conflicts, right?
Correct.
So I don't know that the city needs to pitch them yet unless we've got questions on it. If it's a consent agenda, I don't think we have questions on it, right?
So in the last year or so, we've handled these a couple different ways. And my understanding is that if they get pulled, then they have to get moved to the legislative agenda and treated as a regular legislative item, which includes a question hearing.
Okay, thanks. That makes sense.
You could tell me if I'm wrong there, but.
Well, I mean, thank you, Chair. There's no required public hearing, so there's not a need to have to open the public hearing. But yes, typically we, as they move to the regular agenda, we typically do just introduce the item and be available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, and then so they can just introduce the item, can ask if anyone has questions, and then we can vote.
Take a motion and vote. Yes, exactly.
Okay, commissioners, do you have any questions for staff on this item? If not, we can entertain a motion.
Kayla McCord, move to disapprove for the reasons set forth in the item, the subject application for construction plans.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner McCord to disapprove this item. Item N.
It's J, I second.
Commissioner Warren, second. Myrna, would you please call the roll?
Sherry Heinzman,
Yes.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Travis Perthews,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
Doug Noble,
Yes.
Chris Stanley.
Yes.
So that motion carries 6 in favor, none opposed, with Commissioner Haney abstaining. So that'll take us to, let's see what we got next. Item U, which is this is your item, Andrea.
Absolutely, Chair. I'd be happy to introduce it. So this is a consideration and possible action to approve with the conditions set forth in the item, an application for a preliminary final plat combo consisting of approximately 9.6 acres. That's for a property that's generally located at 312 Rancho Bueno Drive, to be known as the Middle Gabriel Estates Track 18. All technical review comments have been addressed by the applicant. The only pending item is for the applicant to post fiscal surety on the required public improvements. And that's why staff is recommending approval with conditions. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff on this item? If not, we can entertain a motion on this item.
This is Doug Noble. I make a motion to approve with the conditions set forth in the item for preliminary final plat combo for item number 2020-12-PFP.
Okay.
This
This
is
is
Jay,
Sid.
I'll second.
Go ahead.
Okay, we're going with Commissioner Warren. I heard him first. So, second, Commissioner Warren. Myrna, can you please call the roll?
Sherry Heinzman,
Yes.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Travis Perthews,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Doug Noble.
Yes.
Okay, so that item carries 6-0 with Commissioner Stanley abstaining. So the next item is item V, and I believe Commissioner Stanley is recusal on this one, and I am as well. So Commissioner Heinzman, would you mind presenting or running this one?
Okay, no problem. All right, for item B, consideration and possible action to approve an application for a preliminary final plat combo consisting of approximately 0.64 acres in the Clement Stubblefield Survey, abstract number 558, generally located at 600 Montgomery Street, to be known as Snowy 706 2020-20 PFP. Do we have any questions from the commissioners? All right. With that said, I'd like to put forth a motion as pertains to this item. Do I have a motion?
This is Doug Noble. I'll make a motion to approve the application for preliminary final plat combo for item 2020-20-PFP.
Thank you, Commissioner Noble. Do I have a second?
Kayla McCord, I'll second that.
Thank you, Kayla. Myrna, could you please call the roll?
Sherry Heinzman,
Yes.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
Doug Noble.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. And then, okay, so that takes us to item AJ, which is Mr. Clark.
Hey, good evening, Commissioners. Item AJ, consideration and possible action to disapprove for the reasons set forth in the item, an application for an amending plat consisting of approximately 0.58 acres, consisting of lots 17 and 18, Block 1, Plan Unit Development of Sun City Neighborhood 34, generally located at 303 Hills of Texas Trail, to be known as amending plat of Lot 1718, Block 1, Planned Unit Development of Sun City Neighborhood 34. This is a case number 2021-6FP. So when we had submitted this for agenda, there had been two outstanding comments for our reason of disapproval regarding notes on the plat that we thought needed to be listed and fiscal surety. After discussion and discussing with our other departments that review this, we were able to determine that those notes weren't needed, and for this specific amending plat, they actually didn't need fiscal surety. So there aren't any other outstanding comments on it anymore, and it is good for approval. So I would like this item to be revised to say consideration and possible action to approve an application for an amending plat consisting of approximately 0.582 acres, consisting of lot 1718, block 1, Plan Unit Development of Sun City Neighborhood 34, generally located at 303 Hills of Texas Trail, to be known as amending plat of lot 17 and 18, block 1, Plan Unit Development of Sun City Neighborhood 34.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff on this item? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Haney,
This
Second,
is Doug
Stanley.
Noble, a second.
Commissioner Noble, second. Bernie, call the roll.
Sheree Heinzman,
Yes.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Travis Berthews,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
Doug Noble,
Yes.
Chris Stanley.
Yes.
Okay, so that item carries 7-0. So that will take us to our first regular agenda, legislative agenda item, which is item BC, which is a rezoning map amendment, and this is Mr. Clark's item as well.
Sorry, sharing it made funny things happen to my mute button. All right. So commissioners, this is a rezoning request for the transfer station located near San Gabriel Park. It's got a case number 2021-4-RAZ. Come on. There we go. This is a public hearing and possible action on a request for a zoning map amendment to rezone a 48.644 acre tract of land located in the Antonio Flores Survey, abstract number 235, patented in conflict with the Orville Perry Survey, abstract 10, Williamson County, Texas, from the residential single family and public facility zoning districts to the public facility and industrial zoning districts for the property generally located at the western corner of North College Street and W.L. Walden Drive. As you can see here on the location map, this is south of San Gabriel Park, just across the river, and to the east of the baseball and soccer fields that I'm sure many of you are familiar with from visiting those parks. To the north of the property, you can see that there's a San Gabriel River running along it, as well as existing open space And of note too, in that open space to the north running to the river, that property is all part of these same parcel packages. They just aren't necessarily being rezoned with this. To the southeastern portion of these properties, there's a rail line that runs through town. And on the other side of that rail line is, as you can see, a lot of undeveloped land that is in part owned by Southwestern University. So now that we've looked at that, we're going to look at the future land use map. The vast majority of this property has a future land use designation of institutional. And the institutional designation is referring to individual or concentrations of government operations and uses. These are the target for this designation is meant to be government facilities as well as other public facilities such as schools, hospitals and major healthcare facilities and religious uses. Obviously with that, there's a target ratio of 100% non-residential. So this designation is really honed in on those public facilities and public institutions, which plays into this rezoning. So again, here's the land use ratio. Not much is going to change. The existing use is going to be continued. This request is seeking to expand transfer station for this property. There's a couple different uses at this facility right now. It's owned by the city of Georgetown, but it's all government uses, and with their expansion, they're needing to rezone portions of the property to accommodate that expansion. But in terms of the land use ratio, will not be changing. There's the zoning map. Important to note, so the proposed public facility is on the residential single family parcel, that 25.7 acres located around WL Walden Drive. That's what's being proposed for public facility. And the industrial proposal is for what is already public facility that's highlighted here. So that's that parcel to the north. It's 18.78 acres. That's public facility and it's proposed for industrial. And that's the same for the 0.44 acre little stub next to the railroad and the 2.2 acre portion that borders the WL Walden portion. So everything that's PF that's highlighted is going to industrial, and everything that is RS is going to public facility. Public facilities is a zoning designation for government, public, and semi-public uses. It's actually very in line with the institutional future land use designation. It's got pretty standard dimensional standards. It can include schools, parks, hospitals. Again, this is very in line with the institutional future land use designation. Some uses allowed are high density, but the more high density uses that are being proposed are going to be in the industrial portion of this site. As y'all know, industrials for manufacturing and high intensity activities that aren't suitable near residential properties. It's going to generate heavy traffic. It's going to have big vehicles going in and out of there. This industrial, when we're considering rezoning request, you got to understand it's going to need some buffering. As you can see, there are a lot of buffer yard requirements and setback requirements to help kind of keep it properly spaced out. There's the industrial uses. So moving into the approval criteria for this rezoning request, we found that the application was complete. We had all the information we needed, so we found that it complied with that approval criteria. We found that the zone change was consistent with the comprehensive plan. Again, as we discussed, this is an existing government facility. What they're proposing, the two districts, public facility, it's almost verbatim for the institutional future land use designation, and industrial, while having some intensive uses that may not necessarily be in line with institutional, it's properly buffered, and the proposed use still does line up with what that institutional future land use designation is looking for. Again, too, you can see, there's San Gabriel River, there's the rail line and undeveloped land, as well as, open space and parks that's properly buffering what's being proposed for industrial from any, nearby residential, which again, as you can see here, there's not any nearby residential. This isn't like a very public facing, these aren't very public facing parcels, they're kind of well tucked away. And that's why we find that, this is a compliant request. The third criteria, and this, I was kind of just talking about this and hitting on this, but we found that it did promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the city, as well as safe, orderly, and healthful development. So again, we find that this is properly situated for the industrial and public facility uses they're looking at. It's got many natural and man-made buffers to keep it from anything that might be adversely affected, and we don't think that it will adversely affect anything nearby. For the fourth criteria, we did find that the zone change is compatible with the present uses. Again, what's being proposed as industrial, it's bordering what existing industrial zoning, as you can see. It's bordering no residential, actual residential uses. And the less intense parcel to the west that is a little closer to residential areas and gets a little closer to downtown. That's what's being proposed for a public facility, which is not going to be as intense. They're not going to be able to do the industrial uses on that public facility portion. And finally, we just think that we found that this property has adequate space, for growing and adding in the industrial uses they want to do. Again, there's a lot of acreage on this property. It's well buffered, it's not crazy terrain, so it's suitable for what will be allowed in public facility and industrial. And for public notice, there were 2 property owners within 300-foot buffer, one of which is the people proposing it, aka the city of Georgetown. There was a notice in the Sun News on April 4th. Signs were posted on the property, and to date, staff has received 0 written comments in favor or in opposition. In summary, this is a public hearing and possible action on a request for a zoning map amendment to rezone a 48.644 acre tract of land located in the Antonio Flores Survey, abstract number 235, patented in conflict with the Orville Perry Survey, abstract 10, Williamson County, Texas, from the residential, single family, and public facility zoning districts to the public facility and industrial zoning districts. The property generally located at the western corner of North College Street, WL Walden Drive. For UDC section 3.0602E, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall hold a public hearing, make a recommendation to the city council. The applicant, as well as the representative from the city for this project with the city, are here. That's Kyle Miller as the applicant and Eric with the city of Georgetown. They're both here for questioning should y'all have any. They don't have any presentations, but they're here for questions.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff on this item? Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant or city staff related to this item? Okay, not hearing any. We can open the public hearing. We don't, that I see have anyone signed up to speak on this item.
No,
So
sir, I did not see any hands up or comments in the chat box or Q&A.
So we can close the public hearing, and then the floor is open to a motion.
This is Jay. I move that we approve as presented.
So we have a motion to recommend approval. Commissioner Warren, do we have a second?
Tim Haney will second it.
Commissioner Haney, second. Any discussion on this item? If not, Myrna, will you please call the roll?
Cherie Heinzman,
Yes.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Travis Perthews,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Yes, ma'am.
Doug Noble.
Yes.
Okay, so that item carries 6-1 with Commissioner Stanley abstaining. So that takes us to our next item, which is item BD, which is a development agreement. And this is Ethan.
Thank you. I had to get my screen set up here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Correct. Tonight's the last item on our legislative agenda tonight is a request for a development agreement. These are not items that come before the board quite often, but a development agreement is simply a situation where the city and a developer enter into an agreement on the terms for how a property is to be developed. Most often here in Georgetown, we see these agreements in our ETJ, and they're typically related to a development that's not feasible or strategic to annex, or in situations where we want to provide utility service above and beyond what our CCA requires in our ETJ, or perhaps in relationship to a mud district. And this is how we give our consent. But tonight's development agreement that's before you is related to the expansion of an existing electric substation run by LCRA Transmission Services Corporation off of Stadium Drive. So the property we're going to be talking about tonight is just over 24 acres in size. And so it's catty corner from the Crystal Knoll neighborhood. If you've been to Wrench Brewery, it's the property right across the street, or if you are standing in the Georgetown High School parking lot, you can see that existing substation from there. Tonight we are considering the agreement for the entire property, but the area that will be developed is specifically within that blue square within the larger red square on the eastern half, excuse me, the western half of the site. The area has come before the board for this commission several times. We've considered a rezoning off of Austin Avenue, just across the street from the high schools. Just last year, we considered the rezoning for the Alta Georgetown project across the street. You've seen items on the consent agenda for the Lower North Georgetown facility. The Costco is further up at the intersection of Interloop and 35. And then most recently, this past week, council made approval of our Vita Apartments project possible. Generally, the development with all those multifamily sites and commercial properties we're seeing is in line with how we would expect this mixed-in neighborhood area to grow, being so close to a regional center. The property is bordered to the south by that open space designation, which generally just represents floodplain in this scenario. And to the south, again, you have that mixed-in neighborhood designation where most of the properties are undeveloped or used as a very rural type form of residential, a category on large acreages, and then the high school, of course, in that institutional category. A electric substation is generally considered by our code to be a utility services intermediate use. Within the ag district, it is a permitted use with the 5 limitations on your screen. These limits relate to landscaping, distance to residential properties. They relate to materials and fencing requirements, security. All of these are really trying to, all these limits on the ag zoning are trying to make it compatible and reduce the visual impact on those other residential and agricultural, very low intensity commercial uses that you would typically find in an ag zoning district. So for instance, I think the fencing is the best example of this. In the ag district, we specify the types of fencing you have to use around here, the materials, and those materials obviously being made in an effort to keep it aesthetically pleasing with the probably most likely rural environment you would have in the ag district. The landscape screening here would be in addition to all of our other landscaping requirements, including street yards and buffering. And what this would require here would be evergreen shrubs planted all the way around the substation. These pose several issues for LCRA in developing the substation, as well as some other things not specifically listed here, such as our impervious cover limit being 20% in the ag district. And so we can talk about that here in just a second. My computer is all frozen up. So LCRA intends to really develop this new substation as an expansion of their current one. If you think about this being turned 90 degrees from north is to the left, you would have the existing substation here, the slightly elevated pad for the new substation with the detention pond in the rear, and then leaving the remainder of the property undeveloped for the time being. In evaluating those issues that would front LCRA if they were to go through a typical development process, it would require multiple applications, variances, administrative exceptions, etc. And so in lieu of all those different applications, we opted to go through the development agreement process instead. The development agreement before you today proposes 10 specific terms that either modify or play off of the our typical development standards found in our UDC. The first term is related to fencing. LCRA requires a higher level of fencing and certain material requirements to meet their security standards. This would, terms number 1 would allow them to meet that and would allow us to approve that. Item number 2, we will get to in just a minute when we talk about the alternative landscaping plan. But there are items number 2 and 4, excuse me. But there will be certain types of landscaping in certain locations required by this agreement. A planting plan will be provided as an exhibit to the agreement. Related to that, the substation does remove a significant amount of heritage trees. LCRA has agreed to mitigate for the loss of those heritage trees and provide as many shade trees on site as they can accommodate to mitigate for the protected trees. Under our standard UDC code, a public utility easement is required to be dedicated around a property at time of platting or at the time of site development. LCRA will be dedicating that utility easement. Similar to that, at site development, sidewalks are required within the boundaries of construction. So in lieu of constructing the sidewalk here in front of the substation, they'll be paying the $20,736 amount into our sidewalk fund for the later construction of the sidewalk. That amount was approved by our development engineers. They have agreed to a longer than typically seen level spreader in the rear that allows the intensity of the flow of the water out of the detention pond to be less. And they have proposed some modified standards for their driveway onto Stadium Drive, as well as setting an impervious cover limit that helps them overcome that 20% from the ag zoning district, but is still reasonable for the project that they want to accomplish. Here we go. So if you take a look at that concept plan again, around the borders of Inner Loop at the top of the screen and Stadium on the left, you can see that 15-foot PUE they would be dedicating. The fencing would be wrapping all the way around that pad. And within the blue dashed line, that would be the area that the sidewalk money is meant to be in. The sidewalk money is meant to cover construction of sidewalk within that light blue dashed line in front of the substation. And the largest stand of heritage trees that will be affected by this project, just for your information, would be right there in the middle of the pad. Kind of hard to work around. Earlier referenced that items number 2 and 4 from the terms related to a planting plan. This would ultimately be the planting plan that would be included as an exhibit to the agreement. Along the front, you can see plantings that would satisfy our street yard landscaping requirements and double as screening of the substation and its equipment from Stadium Drive. Stadium Drive is ultimately planned to be a minor arterial road, and like we saw before, significant amount of residential development on the opposite side of the street. Along the top of the drawing, you'll see 150 feet of screening shrubs. That's an amount that we felt was reasonable to be screening from the street. You know, you can't necessarily see that far down the side as you're driving down Stadium Drive, but would not be potentially as excessive as planting all the way around the substation would be. Along the rear of the property around the detention pond, by code, a medium level buffer yard would be required, full of shrubs, ornamental trees, and shade trees. That is what you see there. This not only provides some screening from the properties to the south, but also from the properties to the very south, thinking of looking from the Georgetown High School parking lot. This detail provided by LCRA shows the type of fencing they'd be constructing. It would be chain link, 10.5 feet in height, and they have shown the concertina wire standing straight up instead of leaning out over you, leaning away from the substation. Our UDC establishes 2 criteria for the review of a development agreement. The first being, of course, that the agreement promotes the health, safety, and welfare of the city, as well as the safe and orderly development. And staff finds that this does. This modifies slightly our standard UDC requirements, which of course we would say protect the public health, safety, and welfare, and does provide for the safe and orderly development of the city. Not only are we getting a piece of infrastructure, we are getting a piece of infrastructure that we just know is safe and can be built in a very a more attractive manner than might otherwise be. The second criteria is, of course, compliance with our comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan, as much as you would not expect it, does talk about this kind of situation, and we really do talk a lot about infrastructure planning in our comprehensive plan, as well as working with interlocal partners, which we consider LCRA to be. And so in that regards, it does comply with the comprehensive plan. That is all I have for you. We are not asking you to hold a public hearing today, just discussion and a recommendation. I'm available for questions. Our city attorney, assistant city attorney is here. He's available for questions, as well as some representatives from LCRA.
Mr. Harwell, this is Chris Stanley. Just for my edification, what is the policy with the city in terms of putting sidewalk money in a sidewalk fund for future use instead of just building the sidewalk while they're building the rest of the infrastructure?
So it is an option available by code now. A developer may either choose to construct the required sidewalk, or they can choose to post fiscal surety for 125% of the cost of what they think it would take them today.
Okay, so it's just a rule that they can select one or the other.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's a bond. It's not a fund for future. It's just a bond that they'll do it.
We can do it several different ways. We can accept a performance bond for that sidewalk. We can, well, by code, we can accept a performance bond, letter of credit, or cash. In this instance, the payment will be cash.
But it's a performance bond. It's not money they're paying to Georgetown. Now Georgetown has to go build it, right?
No,
Yeah,
they would be.
That's one of the options.
They're and the agreement, they would, per the agreement, they would be giving us the cash, and we would be going to build it ourselves.
Okay.
In the future, that money would probably be saved until an expansion of Stadium Drive.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions for staff on this item? Okay, do we have any questions for the applicant on this item? Okay, not hearing any, we can go ahead and open the public hearing. And on this item as well, I don't believe we have anyone signed up to speak. I don't see any hands raised, so
No, sir.
we can close the public hearing, and the floor is open to a motion.
This is Jay. I move that we approve as presented.
Kayla McCord, I second.
Okay, Commissioner Warren with the motion for a recommendation of approval, and Commissioner McCord for second. Any discussion on this item? If not, Myrna, would you please call the roll?
Sheree Heinzman,
Yes.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Travis Perthews,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Doug Noble,
Yes.
Chris Stanley.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion carries 7-0. So that's all the items on our legislative agenda. The last item that we have is item BE, which is discussion items, updates, announcements from other boards and commissions. Do we have any of those tonight?
Yes, sir. Just two quick updates / announcements. One of them is very, very happy to share with our commission the addition of our newest member to the planning department. Cesar Acosta has joined our team. He is our new senior planner, and he's under the long range planning team. So he's actually going to be working very closely with Nat Wagoner in working on projects and activities and in implementing our comprehensive plan and working on small area plans and just everything else that we need so that we can continue being able to move forward with that, with those projects and those implementations. And so we're very happy to have him with us. He's already been a great asset to the team. So just wanted to make sure that we introduce it because you also may see him at future meetings as we continue to provide PNC with updates or bring in comprehensive plan amendments or annexation requests. That's part of the support that Cesar will be providing to us. So.
Welcome.
Cesar, it looks like we can't hear you for some reason.
Yeah, it doesn't show he's on mute, but I can't hear him.
Nope.
I heard him. He welcomed our new staff.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, and then the other update that I have for you, Commission, is that we staff are working with the UDC Advisory Committee, continuing to work with them on amendments to our tree preservation and landscaping standards. The City Council, after working on the red lines that we had presented you at the last time, we went to City Council at a workshop session, and they directed us to look into two additional items. One of them had to do with considering how we can potentially count trees that are smaller than 3 inches as credit trees. And then the other item that they asked us to look into and explore is the possibility about counting new trees, new landscape trees that are planted on residential lots as on-site replacement for the purposes of tree mitigation. So we're taking that direction. We're going back to the UDC Advisory Committee to work through those specific items. And we hope to be able to come up with some recommendations that we can present to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then ultimately City Council in the summer timeframe. And that's it. No further updates. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. That should be fun. That was that report last time was pretty lengthy, if I remember correctly. There were a lot of parts to that one. Okay, do we have any questions or comments from alternate members on actions or matters considered on the agenda this evening? If not, then I'll remind everyone our next scheduled meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission is May 4th, 2021, and we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'll move that we adjourn.
Okay. Mr.
Yes,
Warren,
Sheree, I second.
Mr. Heitzman, Myrna, would you please call the roll?
Sheree Heinzman,
Yes.
Kayla McCord,
Yes.
Tim Haney,
Yes.
Travis Berthews,
Yes.
Jay Warren,
Ma'am.
Doug Noble,
Yes.
Chris Stanley.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion carries. It is 6:55 and we are adjourned. So thank you everybody for spending your Tuesday evening with us.
Wow, baby.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night,
all.
everyone.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Travis and staff.